to talk a little bit about the Capital Fellows programs. Basically, we're just going to run through, I'm going to talk a little bit generally about the programs, what they are, explain them a little bit. Then we have directors, 2 directors of the program so far, and there's another one coming. And so if you have specific questions about the individual programs, they can, explain things in detail. And then we're going to open it up, and David's here. Come on up, David. And we're going to open it up for questions, because I know there's a lot to learn, and so we would like to answer any questions that you have today. So, welcome. So I'll just explain who's here. So I'm Claire Bunch. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for Capital Fellows. And Megan Thrall is the Director of the Judicial Administration Fellowship. Pam Chu is the Director of the Assembly Fellowship Program. And David Pacheco is the Director of the California Senate Fellows. So the Capital Fellows programs are public service, public policy fellowships where you work for 10 or 11 months working in state government. You do have to have a bachelor's degree. That is our only requirement for the fellowships. As long as you have your degree by September 1st for this application cycle, it's 2015, you can apply. We do have the same program every year. So if you aren't going to be graduating, or you've decided you're going to wait a little while and apply, in a couple years from now, that's great, as long as you have your bachelor's degree. The programs have a stipend of $2,550 a month. You are a Sac State employee, so you do get full health, dental, and vision benefits that go along with that. And student loan deferments if you have any student loans from your undergrad work. So the 4 fellowship programs that we have, the most similar are the Senate and Assembly fellowships, and David and Pam will be giving you more information about those. Those fellowships are working in the state capitol, in a legislator's office or in a committee office, and then the Judicial Administration Fellowship is working in the courts in California, and that placement is the only one that we have that is statewide. So there are placements in the Bay Area, Southern California, and Sacramento region, and Megan will explain that some more. Our 4th director is Brian Aguilar, and he is not here today, unfortunately, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the Executive Fellowship Program. We'll try to give a little bit of a rundown on that after the other 3. Let's see. Our applications are open and ready to start applying if you're ready to apply. You go to our website. It's on the back of the Capital Fellows Programs brochure that we have some out there. There are, the application deadline is February 9th of 2015. You will be filling out the section about the school you went to and activities, volunteer work, and honors that you've achieved. And there's 3 recommendation letters, transcripts, and then personal and policy statements for each of the programs. So I'm going to go ahead and let each of the directors talk about their programs in detail. So, Megan?
I'm Megan Thorell. I'm the director of the Judicial Fellowship Program. And like Claire said, we are the only program that is statewide. So this year I have a fellow who is as far north as Chico and as far south as San Diego, with everything in between, including the Central Valley, Bay Area, and the Sacramento region. The courts that we work with are superior courts throughout the state, and fellows are placed in the executive office. So we're different in the sense that you aren't working in a courtroom, you are not working with a judge. We are on the back end of the system. So projects that my fellows work on consist of things like, I have a fellow in Santa Clara this year who is identifying juvenile offenders who could benefit from participating in a mental health and substance abuse court. So this is kind of like a specialty court program for kids who have these issues but have also had some pretty serious offenses, identifying those, pairing them up with services, and carrying them through the system in a more successful manner than just juvenile hall or county jail. So, depending on their age. I also have fellows who work in statistical analysis, so they will look at, so California has something called collaborative courts, which mean that if you are of a certain group, like a juvenile offender, or if you are a veteran, or if you are a victim of domestic violence, then you go in some counties to these specialty courts that deal specifically with your issue or with your type of person, like a veteran, for example. And so I have a fellow this year who is researching the efficiencies of these courts. Like, are the participants having successful outcomes in treatment? Are they reporting to probation when they should be? And analyzing it in a statistical way, so the outcomes of these particular court programs. We also have a lot of involvement with public policy. I have a fellow in San Diego who's analyzing all of the new laws, and new laws are really important to the courts because it helps set bail schedules and identifies other points of change within the court and the criminal justice system. I have fellows working on realignment issues, and so we are very involved in the public policy world. We do have a placement option with the Office of Governmental Affairs for the Judicial Council, and the Judicial Council is kind of the mothership for the courts. It's where all the operations take place, and then the operations trickle down into the superior court level. That placement does work really closely with the state capitol and with other government agencies, and it's a really dynamic place to be. As a fellow in the Judicial Administration Fellowship Program, you earn 6 units of graduate credit in the Public Policy and Administration Department here at Sac State. Since we are statewide, we travel. Every month, we visit a different placement court throughout the state, and we also meet for academic seminar. So our seminars differ slightly from the other 3 programs because of our travel and because we only meet once a month for face-to-face seminar, but we do a lot of online learning, and there is a capstone project which encourage the collaboration with your colleagues throughout the 10 months. We're September through July, and so we have already started. My class is already a month into it, and the other classes start in October. So we're slightly off by about a month or so from the other programs.
Pam, you want to go ahead?
Was your microphone on?
Yeah.
Let's see. Can you hear me? Is it on? You can hear me. Can those of you in the back row hear me okay? Not too well? I'm going to try to project. Okay, is that better? Okay, well, first of all, I am really impressed by this turnout. I think this room is full. Hopefully you're not missing your classes this afternoon. I'd like to take a little informal survey. How many of you are seniors? Okay, so you're all eligible to apply, actually, for next year. And how many of you are juniors? Sophomores? Planning ahead. Freshmen? Oh, and sitting in the front row. Very impressive. Okay. And how many of you are government majors? Okay, so we've got a lot of non-government majors. That's great to see.
That's one thing I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
As your major can be anything. It doesn't have to be anything political. So we
Yeah.
look for all different types of majors, from science to communications to international studies, criminal justice, really, really broad.
Yeah, it's really nice to see there's, I'm assuming, a diversity of majors. I won't go through the list. So switching gears to the legislative branch, and David and I, will sometimes partner up in this presentation, so we can piggyback on each other a little bit. Have any of you done a legislative internship or familiar with what it's like to work at the Capitol? One person? Okay, so I will try not to speak too much in legislative terms, but working in the Assembly and the Senate Fellowship Program, you are essentially working as a legislative aide in the personal office of an Assembly member or senator, or working for a policy committee. What does a legislative aide do? You are part of the staff of an Assembly member, his team. Some of the responsibilities include staffing legislation. We call it staffing bills, which is shepherding a bill idea through the process, through policy committee, through the fiscal committee, all the way to the other house, to the governor. So you're responsible for that. You're also responsible for staffing the assembly member or senator on a committee he might sit on, advising him of vote recommendations, meeting with the stakeholders with issues that will come before the committee. And you will also be responsible for a number of issue areas divided up between the staff. So that means when there are constituents or lobbyists or just stakeholders who have an interest in that issue area, they come to the office, you are the point of contact to take that meeting and advising your member on that issue area. So it's definitely a position of great responsibility. It's not an internship, it is a fellowship. You are treated as a staff of that office for the member. It's a very dynamic environment where you have the opportunity to work with the other staff members in the office. Typically, the mentor, you'll have a designated mentor who will work with you throughout the year, in addition to working with the program director and myself. Usually that mentor is the chief of staff in the office or the legislative director, but really, most offices have anywhere between 5 to maybe 7 or 8 people. So everyone in the office typically takes a role in helping to guide and mentor the fellow throughout the year. So you're interacting with the staff in your office, staff of the other assembly members' offices, constituents, the public, third house lobbyists that are coming through. So it's a very dynamic and social environment. The difference between, I think, the judicial fellowship and the executive fellowship with the legislative fellowships is that you are mostly in one building. You are working in the Capitol building, so there's a lot of opportunities to see and interact with the other fellows, the fellows from the Senate program, your own program, and so forth. We do also have an academic seminar component, and that is every Friday afternoon. You leave your office, go across the street to the legislative office building for an afternoon of academic seminar, where you are taking a step back and talking about what you're learning in your offices, and doing various projects, papers or debates around the issue areas and what you're learning in your offices. I would say, there's a lot of other pieces to it, but that's kind of the overview of it. I think for those of you who are interested in influencing public policy, making public policy, and obviously in the legislature, public policy is very much intertwined with politics. So for those of you who have an interest in politics, it's a great environment where you can get exposure to both. David, what have I left out?
No, it just, I like everyone else, I'm encouraged to see the turnout, and being at Sac State, you're in a unique position to participate in a very competitive program. We always get a very good representation of Sac State applicants because you're here. The Center for California Studies and the Capital Fellows Program is here. You can get the additional input and resources. It's not as readily available to other folks that are applying across the state. There is no other program in the country like the Capital Fellows Program, and that speaks for the Senate, the Assembly, the Executive, and the Judicial. There is not anything like it, and I've seen and I meet every year with all of the internship programs across the country. We're very unique, and the opportunity is sitting right at your doorstep, and I'm encouraged to see juniors and sophomores who are doing their early work and research. How many of you are familiar with when you go into a restaurant or a fast food restaurant and you see up on the menu, you see the calorie content? That's a pretty new phenomena. A former Senate fellow wrote that, obviously under the name of the senator she worked for, but she wrote that legislation, worked on it for a year. It didn't pass. The senator kept her on staff for a year after her fellowship, and it got passed. All of the handheld cell phone prohibitions while driving, all of those laws on the books were done by Senator Simidian, and each year it was a Senate fellow who drafted, researched, did the introductory legwork, always under the senator's name, always under the senator's guidance, but it was a Senate fellow each year that worked on that legislation. So there's things that impact you every day that you, as a Senate fellow or Assembly fellow, any of the executive fellows, have an opportunity to actually change history. And I don't want to sound bombastic about that, but it is a unique position. Folks coming just out of school, which most of our applicants are, we get some mid-career folks as well, are given the opportunity to be a full-fledged staffer in their placement, either, as said earlier, either working as personal staff to a Senate office or as a committee assistant or a committee consultant doing policy work in an expert area. I know two of my outgoing fellows just got hired in career positions for the Department of Finance as budget analysts. That opportunity probably wouldn't have been available to them had they not gone through the fellowship program. Everybody that works in the Capitol, either house, as fellows, you're considered vetted, you've competed, you've been interviewed, you're there because of your interest in public policy, your history of civic engagement, your successful academic career, and grades are important, but that's not what drives us. But your involvement as an individual, whether it's community, church, politics, business, any area that you're volunteering for is critical in how we separate the applicants when we have 300 to 500 applicants, depending on the program, for 18 spots. We need to sort, and one of the key sorting devices that we use for the fellowship program is civic engagement, whatever that might be. So particularly for those of you that are early in your academic careers, I encourage you, if you're not participating in what you believe in, again, church, community, school, politics, you should be doing that now, because I think that really separates a lot of the folks who apply. We have about a third of our fellows come in from the CSU system, about another third come in from the UC system, and about a third from the private school sector. And I think that's pretty much across the board for all four programs.
And then some from out of state too. Usually those out of state applicants have a connection. They're originally from California, or there's some other connection in California.
But the real driving force for all of our programs, particularly the Senate program, is that you have a genuine interest in wanting to make change in public policy, working for a legislator. They're the elected official who give you the opportunity to actually impact legislation. And it's rare and it's unique. There's nothing quite like it for folks just coming out of school. There's some similar programs at the law school level, but it's something that drives me. I was a fellow before most of the people in this room were born, and it's the capstone to my career in terms of promoting that opportunity for other talented, passionate individuals who want to work in public policy, want to change the face of California. We take people from all political persuasions, that just like this makeup of the legislature, we have Republicans and Democrats. I don't think we have any independents right now. So people will work in partisan offices if they're assigned to a particular member. If you work for a committee, you're more so working for the House and trying to provide clarity on the complicated bills that are there. And folks come in without any experience in analytical writing, but they're strong writers in their academic career. They come in, and within that 11 months, they're writing bill analysis, and they're going into the public record. So it's a unique opportunity that I would encourage you all to apply. We're here on campus, so that's the real luxury that Sac State applicants have, is that you can access us for advice or general information. We encourage you to apply, but at the same time, realize that the Capitol Fellows is ranked in the top 10 nationwide with Google and some other really sought-after opportunities, but only because it is unique and it is profound, the way you can affect change and better the state of California as a new career, potentially career staffer with the legislature or the executive or judicial.
Yeah, there's some amazing careers that have been launched at this fellowship, and that's one thing that amazes me year after year. So, it really can start, great things. So the fourth program we have is the Executive Fellowship Program. Brian Aguilar is the director, and if you want some more information in detail, I'm sure he'd, love to have you come, you make an appointment, and he can talk to you more about it. I'm just going to run through it briefly. Executive Fellows are professional staff in the executive branch, and the executive branch includes everything from the governor's office to Department of Food and Agriculture, Department of Education, Health and Human Services. It's very broad. So all of the executive fellows are not working in one location like the legislative fellows are. They're working mostly in downtown Sacramento, but in different offices there. So again, you're working full-time as staff. And the way executive fellowship works is once you're in orientation, there actually is an opportunity for you to interview in various offices. And then once you decide which offices you would prefer to work in, you send your scores and the offices send their scores, and the director's job is to mesh those two. And so the current director, Brian, would work with you for a selection to be made which office you'd be working in. So do you guys have any other thoughts on executive fellowship? Any additional?
I would just say that for including executive, but really all four programs are highly structured. You aren't just selected and then plopped into an office. You go through a pretty intensive multi-week long orientation. Every single one of the 64 fellows is paired with a mentor. So you have a lot of support in order to ensure a successful 10 or 11 months in the program. But I think that especially with executive and the legislative programs, and then my fellows in the Sacramento and Bay Area region really benefit from being part of the Capital Fellows Consortium, because you get to go to a lot of different networking events. We have a pretty extensive alumni network that hosts events throughout the year. There are luncheons and talks and just a lot of exposure to state government as a whole. So even if you are in the executive program, but you might be interested in a judicial issue, there could be opportunities for you to cross-pollinate and learn about state government in general, California in general, which is important.
So we do pick 64 fellows every year. So we'll go through the same cycle next year. 18 Senate fellows, 18 Assembly, 18 Executive, and 10 Judicial fellows, and that's because of the amount of travel that Judicial fellows are doing.
Which the program pays for.
Yeah. So after you apply, and the next step, like I said, February 9th is our deadline, then your applications are reviewed, and then you will find out whether you have an interview or not. So there's two stages. There's the application stage and then interview for those that are picked. And then in May, you find out whether you're selected. And then you would start the program in the following fall. So we have fellows that are starting next week. So Monday. And the judicial fellows have already started. So
It's really important, I think, for all four programs, if you apply for any one or if you apply for all of them, is that you put a lot of time into your personal statement. That's a real strong sorting device for the readers, and each one of the programs has a committee of readers that you emphasize what motivates you and why you want to pursue this opportunity. And it really makes a difference, because what do we have, 12 to 1,400 total applications for those 64 spots? That's really going to be the initial sorting device to get you into the interview. If you don't get past that, then that's the end of it. But you want to make sure that your statement is strong and humbly states how you've succeeded so far in what you've achieved and what you would like to do in government or judicial or in the legislature, and have lots of time, lots of readers work on that with you.
Reviewers.
Yeah, it's really important, because that, once you get into the interview, on the legislative programs, I think we all interview about
It's 50 to 75.
50 to 75,
for
right?
each
And
program.
so, but then you're on your own. Then you can show your stuff and let us know who you are and what you're about. But that personal statement's important. I don't have to tell you about references. I think we all require at least one academic reference. Make sure you choose a professor that knows you or your work well. It makes a big difference. Yeah, I think we should just ask questions.
Yeah. Just one other thing. So an academic recommender, someone you've worked for, that could be paid or volunteer, and then the third one would be up to you. But those are the three that we're looking for. So yeah, I think we've covered everything generally. So does anyone have any questions, specific questions? This is a rare opportunity to have all these directors here at once, so, yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I had questions concerning the academic you just talked about. Does it have to be about, the person has to be from the CSU system, or does it have to be from any system?
No, it could be if you were in a community college or another university and then transferred here. I'm sorry?
You had to have worked for them, or just a student?
No, student.
Oh, I thought you said you had to work for them.
No, the other recommendations, one of the others can be someone that you've worked for.
Question number 2. I know you wanted to shed light on the students, you were talking about the judicial system, or you were able to work with probationers or the courts. But what I thought was interesting was maybe like, is there any programs where we oversee like police work? Because there's been a lot of like police brutality and stuff like that within our communities here in California. And it was just interesting. Maybe I thought I'd ask the question.
That's a good question, but the answer is no. We are strictly court operations. So judicial administration deals with all non-judicial affairs, judicial affairs meaning like court rulings for the court. So
no internal affair programs that we could be?
there's no IA in the courts. You'd get fired if there was a problem. There's no investigation. So.
And the executive fellowship, would there be any on the other side?
Not local jurisdictions.
No.
Just Department of Justice.
But we haven't had
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes. You, go ahead.
So you mentioned something about volunteering and what distinguishes us throughout our application process. I was wondering that I do a lot of community involvement, but the majority of it is employment. I wonder if volunteer really distinguishes it over being employed with.
It's not necessarily employed or volunteer, but just showing that you have something that drives you outside of your academic career, that you're engaged and involved. If you're paid for it, all the more blessings. But that doesn't discount your being committed and being civically engaged. Does that get to your question? Yeah.
You guys talk about being or receiving your bachelor's or having graduated. What if you're a student still in the following year? Would you still be able to participate?
No, you have to, it's a full-time job, basically, and you're earning 6 graduate units along with it. So you have to have that bachelor's degree completed by September 1st of the year that you're going to be a fellow.
Okay, so it's practically a job.
It is full-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
not practically.
It is.
This is it.
This is, yeah.
You get health, dental benefits, aside from the stipend. It's 9 to 5. It's not a short term. It's for 11 months. It's 9 to 5. I think 10 months for the judicial. But you also, if you have any outstanding student debt, that's deferred for the year that you're a fellow, which is good for those of you like me that borrowed a lot in my undergraduate career. So you don't have to worry about your student loans. But it is a full-time job. You have your mentor who supervises your work, but you have your directors who supervise your orientation, and then work with all of the mentors to make sure that you're getting the most out of your learning experience, because you're learning a new career, you're learning a new job, and likewise, the placement office is getting the work that they need out of you as a brand new associate or staffer.
So as a full-time position, you can earn 6 units towards grad credits, but it couldn't be in a graduate program at the time. It would just, like if I wanted to join.
So let me explain how that works. So the Senate and Assembly Fellows earn, assuming you complete the work, you earn 6 graduate units from the government department here on campus, graduate units. The Judicial Fellowship and the Executive Fellowship, you earn those 6 graduate units from the Public Policy Department here on campus. Now, we enroll you through our program. You do not have to enroll in the university as a graduate student. You don't have to pay the fees to enroll as a graduate student. We pay for all that. If you decide to continue on to get a master's degree, then you would have to apply to those departments. Now, a lot of departments take the units towards graduate units, so it can help you accomplish those master's degrees, but it's just no guarantee that you're in those programs.
But we do discourage people taking other academic work during the fellowship year, because we're going to keep you pretty busy.
Yeah, okay, I was wondering, I was like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
I did have a second question, it's
Yeah.
just clarification. The legislative fellow program, that's the only one that's specifically in the Capitol? The other one-
Yeah, Assembly and Senate.
Right.
Yes.
Post.
Now, the executive fellows might work in the Capitol,
In the
but
governor's
most
office.
of them don't.
The governor's office
The governor's
takes
office.
1 or 2 fellows, but the rest are in the buildings surrounding the Capitol.
Oh, the rest are in the building.
Downtown.
Yeah, downtown.
It's all in that area.
All the agencies, pretty much. There might be 1 or 2 that are out in the outskirts, but almost all of the placements for the executive are in the downtown
Downtown
area.
area, yeah. Yes.
Can you give me a few examples of what other participants launched after this experience? You said there were...
Yeah, we have a very large alumni network. The Assembly Fellowship started in the 50s, the Senate Fellowship in the 70s, and the Executive and Judicial in the 80s and 90s. So we have about 1,500 alumni. So it really varies. We have elected officials, some judges, but also leaders in nonprofits and professors and a lot of people working in academics. So really, it's
Lawyers.
I mean, it really is the gamut for what you can do with it.
There are many who stay on, also continue on in the legislative branch, so you'll see a lot of staff now or lobbyists. One thing I wanted to add earlier is within the legislative programs, but in particular, many of the fellows are retained either by their offices or they're hired by other offices. So it is not just necessarily a one-year fellowship. It's, for many people, the launch of the start of a career.
And at the end of the year, you may decide the specific office you're working in isn't for you, but maybe if you're an executive fellow, you might be interested in trying to apply for a different office in a different, in the executive branch. Judicial fellows, several this last year, actually got jobs after working in the judicial branch. So
Yeah, the courts went through a big cut, almost $1 billion cut in the past few years due to the recession. So our hiring wasn't as robust, but things are starting to change. So it actually is a really good entree into a career in public service in the courts.
yeah.
But where people end up is really varied. The majority leader for the House of Representatives is a former fellow, Javier Becerra, who's a congressman who is originally from Sacramento but represents LA, and is the number 2 in the minority caucus of the House of Representatives. Here we've got a fellow from just 5 years ago. He's still in his 20s, just got elected to the state assembly. That's a little faster track than normal, but we have a number of people that have served as legislators or gone into city council or local government or gone into business or what have you, but they leave here with the Capitol Fellows experience, no matter which branch, that they can apply into that career that they end up assuming. So whether you stay in the branch that you're working as a fellow or whatever sector you go off to work in. The value and the knowledge and the experience you get, you can apply it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know for the executive, you gave a couple examples like Department of Education, I think you said food and drug too. Is there anything environment focused?
A lot, actually. In this last year's class, there were a lot of fellows who worked in environmental issues. I'm looking on the list from the executive brochure, has quite a few departments. Environmental Protection Agency, let's see, Natural Resources,
ARB,
Air Resources Board,
Cal Recycle.
California Energy Commission, so lots and lots of options. And
for the legislative branches, some of those subject areas are covered in some of the committee assignments. I know for the Senate for this coming year, we'll have opportunities in public safety, business and professions, governance and finance. So there are a number of different areas, perhaps transportation and housing, where people can become experts in that area. No one's expected to be expert in any of these areas coming in, but have a strong passion and commitment to learn that field once they're assigned.
so what's your major? I just have to ask.
Oh, social science, actually.
Oh, okay. Maybe
You
your
can-
biology.
You can go anywhere.
Yeah, you can really go anywhere. So. Yes.
As a legislative aide, do you work with the media, for example, giving them information about the bills?
You wanna answer
you,
that?
You could potentially. I mean, typically as an entry-level legislative aide, well, you have to be careful working with the press, obviously, right? So they probably have to have a pretty good amount of faith in you to start out working with the press, but that's possibly. Sometimes some offices have designated communications director or a press person. But yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, and I had one fellow just a year ago who had a journalism background and it was actually working for a radio station in San Diego. She went to work for Senator De Leon and did backup work for the communications person, is now working for the majority caucus doing press work for all of the members of that caucus. So it's like Pam is saying, there's usually someone that's seasoned being the front person, but there are opportunities. Anyone that gets a personal assignment in the Senate or the Assembly will have the opportunity, correct me, Pam, to work on press releases and personal statements.
Yes, so for the bills that you're staffing, thank you, David. You could be the person responsible for at least drafting the press releases and then working with the more seasoned staffer to help guide you. And similarly, I had a fellow from a year ago who was working in a Republican member's office as a legislative aide, and because he had this tremendous interest in communications, he started getting trained on it, and apparently he was so good that the member would ask that he would do the communications instead of the chief of staff. and he was the person that was editing everyone's work. And then the following year, he's now working in the Republican caucus's communications shop, doing it full time. So there's all those opportunities to be able to grow into something that you're particularly interested in.
And executive fellows for several years have worked in the communications office for the governor too, so that's another opportunity. Anyone else?
Just right here, behind the cap.
Sorry. I know that you said that you can come from any major. I'm a sociology major. Does having coming from a government major background give you a leg up?
No, it doesn't.
Probably about a third of our total applicants to, at least to the Senate and perhaps the Assembly, have poli-sci or government background majors. And there's probably a fourth of the people in the program have some of that backgrounds, but they're also political science, dual major in econ, or social studies or social sciences. And frankly, some of the best fellows that I've worked with, and it's about 180 of them so far, come from a broad-based background and are able to become generalist in whatever's thrown at them, but also become an expert in that one area that they're driven by or their member gets them excited about. So, yeah, any major, and I think a lot of people falsely assume you have to be in politics to apply for the program.
I want to add to that. Really, what's what's most important of what you bring to demonstrate in your application and to be successful in any of the programs is those strong communication skills, ability to get along with people, being adaptable, being quick. Team player. And you have to be able to demonstrate that on your application to make the first cut. As David was talking about, having a personal statement that really stands out, that's interesting, stands out above the 300 or 400 other essays we're reading, but also applies to your policy statement. 3 of the 4 programs have policy statements in addition to the personal statement. And that's
a specific question.
Right, that you answer. And make sure those are well written. You take the time to make sure there are no typos, no grammatical errors. Just every piece of your application, even when you're doing the data entry online of your past work history or volunteer history.
Your name.
Yeah,
Really important.
we're reading it. So if there's typos, this person is not detail-oriented. Just pay a lot of close attention to the application, and you can start as early as now. It's online now, and take your time getting the right combination of recommenders, of people who really know you, the one academic, maybe one employment, one volunteer, whatever capacity where your strengths are.
And you can work on your application from now
Yeah.
until February. So you can go back in, you can work on it and save it and go back in. And so.
For those of you that are, have a little bit more time to prepare, if you're really interested, I would encourage you, as David talked about, to really seek out those opportunities to get involved in either student government or leadership, church, community, political campaigns, whatever it may be, to have a well-rounded application. That's what we're looking for.
Not looking for 4.0.
Yeah, not necessarily the 4.0s. We're much more interested in maybe a 3.25 who's done all these other things and demonstrated their well-roundedness.
And another oversight, a unique position that you're in right now is particularly for those of you that are lower division. SAC's semester program is right here, housed at Sac State. It's a statewide program, but there's an undergraduate opportunity to intern in the Capitol or in the executive. You might look into that for those of you that are early in your career. It's not necessarily a feeder for the fellowship programs, but inevitably we get folks that have gone through that, and it's a good one semester experience where you find out if that's what you want to do or not.
There's a few brochures on the counter back there for that
Yeah,
program.
I don't think we mentioned that since
No.
I've been here.
It's part of the government department and run by Professor Michael Watley. So.
It's a good field test of if that's what you want to do.
And the same can happen on the court side of things. There are courts in the area. I know Yolo County Court in Woodland in particular takes volunteers in their self-help center. And so that's a really good way to gain exposure to the type of work that you could be exposed to in the fellowship, as well as gain some public service experience on a volunteer basis if that's something you feel you might be lacking or interested in buffing up a little bit more.
Anyone else? Okay.
That's your chance.
So, you guys are taking in anyone pretty much. I mean, obviously they have to stand out, but anyone as in what major you're in, how diverse you are. So, my question is, what is it like? Why are these programs set? If you're not looking for anyone for you, for your department to, have more skill and help you guys within your programs, you're actually just taking anyone. So.
I don't understand the
Yeah, I'm
question.
not quite understanding your question
Let me
either.
try.
Okay.
What is this of you guys' programs? I know to help us, but also
To
diversity is so
to bring new leadership to the state of California.
It's really
Yeah.
about it's about public service and, creating a foundation for either a career in public service or exposure to that topic, California in general. So it's really not so much what do we get out of it, because we're public servants as well. We're employees of the university, and so that's our real underlying theme in everything that we do. It's public service, civic engagement, civic education, and providing that opportunity for you. This is a graduate fellowship program, so it's, you know, a step into the big professional world. It's a good opportunity.
I would add, actually, the first program was the Assembly Fellowship Program, and it started in 1957. And it was a way for, at the time, political graduate students or undergrads to get hands-on experience, but at the same time, the legislature was needing to bring in staff, right? So it's evolved, and today it's very much this fellowship program is the feeder. It is the bench of how we bring in new staff. So usually when you look at the 18 fellows we have, it is a diverse, you know, if you look at the rosters, it's diversity of people from different segments, university, different segments of society, diversity in all the different ways you can think of. And that's how we get, you know, our new staff, really well-trained staff. So that's why the legislature helps to fund the program and invest the time and resources to train the fellows so that they remain, and it's kind of the next generation of chiefs of staff and continue on. Is that what you were kind of asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why do we do this?
Yeah. There was someone behind you, I think.
I was just gonna ask, it was mentioned that you guys are on campus. I was just wondering where.
Right
I
in
can't tell you that,
top.
Okay.
3046.
Yeah. Yeah, all the directors have an office, so like I said, if you want to make an appointment with them and talk about the programs, and yeah.
You mentioned the price right at the opening. I just missed that. Was it the price of, like, the cost of being in the program?
There is no cost.
Okay.
Yeah, it's free to apply, and you're here in Sacramento. That's a luxury. A lot of the fellows have to move to Sacramento, and we don't pay for that. We also don't pay for transportation to the interviews, but again, you're here, so you have an advantage.
Although there is a fund to help fellows once they're accepted, those demonstrating a need to help them a little bit with moving expenses and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to get accepted to the program before you even consider that.
But to apply, it's free.
Yeah.
So, and I should say, there's the 4 fellowship programs, and you can apply to one or all 4 of the fellowship. It's really up to you, but make sure you're interested in that program. So learn about the different programs. Don't just blanket apply just because. So if you're going to apply to the executive and judicial fellowships, read the brochures, learn a little bit more about what it means to be a fellow in that program.
Yeah, each program has a different criteria, although they may look similar, but they have different criteria on personal statements. So if the Senate program gets a statement that looks like it was written for the Assembly, it doesn't help. You need to look at the requirements and the objectives of each program. Make sure you tailor your statement to that program. And just like Claire said, you're encouraged to apply for any one or all programs, but make sure you distinguish your statements. The example being the Senate doesn't require a policy paper. Some of the other programs do. So it's important that you make that distinction. But we're available to chat with you about those questions, most quickly by email, but if you want to set up an appointment, we're welcome to do that. We're just a little busy the next few weeks, but in November, December, we'll be a lot more available.
Anybody else?
I have one more.
Okay,
So
no, it's
there's-
fine.
So
We're
there's
not.
another program I'm looking at that would also be after I get my bachelor's. So is there do you guys prefer students like right when you get your bachelor's, or could you wait a couple of years?
You can wait.
Okay.
Yeah, like David mentioned, we also look at what we call mid-career. So someone who's been out of school for a few years. So, yeah, anytime. Till you're 85, you can apply.
What's your after? That's not the limit, Claire.
And Brian Aguilar, the executive director, he was a mid-career fellow, and so if that's something you were interested in, he would be a really good resource of what it's like to come into the program after a significant number of years in the workforce.
Yeah, you're not 22.
Yeah, because Brian was older, and but I think he had a really good experience.
And now he's running the program.
Right, and it worked out.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
The legislative aid was it under the Senate?
It's both. So
Senate
the
or
Assembly
Assembly.
and Senators' offices both have legislative aides.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have committee positions as well in the Senate. I don't think the Assembly does that.
Less so.
Did
yeah.
you? That's so.
Less.
Yeah, much less.
I've got the new brochure too.
Do you?
So-
Oh, hot off the presses, new Senate brochure. There's brochures back there. Those have the stipend for last year. The stipend just increased for this year. So it's actually $2,550. So take brochures.
I've got the new Senate brochure
And David has a new Senate
that
brochure.
has the new
Correct
amounts,
stipend.
current stipend, and contact information.
Thanks for coming, everyone.